Welcome to the Virtual Power Teams podcast, now with AI. And today we have an exciting guest, Will Wigmore. We've known each other with Will for ages, and he's an amazing person, bringing a deep perspective on IT strategy on a global scale with global companies, building global IT architecture, and not just IT, but also business architecture. And now we shared an interest with AI. We've been collaborating on a few topics recently. I'm very pleased to have you, Will, and I know you prepared a brilliant insight. So welcome, and please tell us with your own words who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks, Peter. And first and foremost, yes, I'm a friend of yours, and that's if people are listening, there's probably some credibility that I can gain from just saying that. But yeah, I've had a career in IT for, I'm going to say, decades now. Actually, started as a software developer, progressed through the different roles and ranks of organizations to CIO positions, and found my sweet spot when I started working in the field of strategy and architecture for global companies. And I've had the pleasure of working for one of two of those, the last of which was a shipping company, a global shipping company called Maersk. And prior to that with Mars, the confectionery and consumer goods company that everybody probably will have heard of around your neck of the woods as well. I now work as an independent consultant. I specialize in things to do with IT strategy, things to do with IT architecture, particularly investment roadmaps, and that has led me into being very curious about how different companies are dealing with the difficulty of trying to work out what to do with AI, how to use it, and whether or not to invest in it. I think most believe they do, but some are being a little bit shy about how much they spend on it right now, for obvious reasons as well, given the uncertainties. And yeah, like you said in the introduction, we kind of share this curiosity about AI and about how companies can be ready to adapt and adopt these new technologies that are hitting us.
Excellent, thank you. Now, tell me why you do what you do, and maybe why AI after such a rich career.
Yeah, I get bored rather easily, Peter, to be frank with you. Which is, so it wouldn't have escaped you when we worked together that I wasn't in the same job for more than about 3 years. And I was always told that the first year, you didn't know anything. You were kind of sort of still working out what you were supposed to do. The second year, you were suddenly the expert in that particular role, and the third year, you spent cementing that knowledge and passing it on to others as you searched for your next particular role. So the role, for example, and that's why I think my sweet spot ended up being enterprise architecture, because there's stuff and strategy, because every time you do one of these initiatives, every time you need to look into the future, there's something different. There's great variety. And you also get to work with some of the projects that the company is most excited about, most nervous about, and taking the most risk on as well. So, and actually, life as a consultant even amplifies that further, because these days I get to be, a kind of architectural advisor to many different companies in many different sectors. So this is I'm constantly learning about new business models, and I'm constantly learning about the industries that these companies are operating in as well. There's what I do always find is there is an amazing amount of transferable skills between industries when it comes to thinking through how you do an investment plan for technology. And I think that's probably the currency that I use in terms of my work. And yeah, as I said, I keep getting interesting assignments, working on terrifically exciting projects, and also working with some pretty good people as well. So that's kind of what that spins my plates.
It's good enough, sufficient enough, and motivating enough. Now, ChatGPT in particular and generative AI has taken the world by storm. I mean, the ChatGPT had reached 100 million users within weeks, which was unsurpassed. It's a very steep curve if you look the other technology. Can you tell us where we are in this hype curve? Is it just the beginning? Where we are in terms of market adoption, and is it just a hype?
Well, it's a great question. I think there's it's massive, basically, Peter, and I think there's a lot of industry experts who are wiser than me that are making these kind of predictions. If you think about the amount of money that is being spent developing Gen AI, generating the models that underpin these technologies, the amount of interest that's now going into it, the amount of curiosity from private equity companies that I think is coming forward now as well in this area is massive. And I think, the types of use cases that are kind of shown around can be incredibly inspiring. There's a number of them that are coming out of the healthcare sector, which I think is just a fantastic way to deploy technology and to be able to take forward things like life expectancy and so on. It really is becoming quite something. But I think there's like all new stuff, there's some blips on the way, and I think we're not. I think we're probably in the first kind of blip. And why do I say that? It's because I had a cheeky look at a Gartner document, which I think is being published probably for the first time this year, which is a hype cycle for Gen AI. And so that's a sure sign that something's real. Is that Gartner produce one of these hype cycle diagrams, and the hype cycle, for those listeners who aren't familiar with it, it kind of just shows over a period of time. It's a projection about how different technologies within a particular field are going to fulfill the expectation and the ambition that's being talked around it. Hence, the word hype is being used. So how successful will these individual technologies be in living up to the hype that surrounds them? And I think it's interesting. So first of all, that there is now a hype cycle from companies. It's not just Gartner that's doing this, but other research companies as well. I still think we are finding our feet in this field, but the hype cycle being published signifies there's a certain level of maturity that's now been reached as well. Otherwise, I don't think these documents would exist. There's a few things actually that are hitting this what in Gartner's model they call the peak, of inflated expectations. Where you'll be familiar with this from some of the companies that you work with, where there's a massive amount of hype around it, and all of a sudden people explore it and say, well, it's pretty good technology, but I'm not sure how we can use it, or I'm not sure we can use it in the way that was originally thought of by some of the futurologists, for example. I'll give you one example. Is this AI augmented software engineering, which one would have thought by a lot of coverage in the IT media about this from about 18 months ago, 12 months ago onwards. Companies are not yet, I don't think, embracing it in a way that was anticipated. And I think probably, software developers are breathing a sigh of relief about that at the moment. So maybe these AI augmented software engineering techniques and tools still do need some human intervention, and some companies I'm aware of have made some very bold predictions about this 12 months ago, to the extent that they were changing the way that they were recruiting their software developers, i.e. they were doing a lot less software development recruitment. So I for one, I'm not seeing that one. The companies that I work with, I'm not seeing that they're replacing yet large scale numbers of their developers. Maybe it's the type of development projects that I get to see or get to work with. That's maybe the reason for it. So maybe simpler stuff, quite simple transactional stuff. And single transactional stuff could be maybe a little bit more of a better case study for it. But the predictions are that it's going to take a lot longer for that to reach its kind of natural balance and its productivity gains. So I think that's pretty interesting. I think the second thing I'd say about just taking a look at this hype cycle, there's a lot of the terminology on this life cycle, on this hype cycle, it's written from a very technical perspective, and you'd maybe understand that if it's coming from a technology advisory company. But I think it's for even comparison to some other hype cycles, this one is very, very technical. And I think that it's often, that the tech components are still kind of driving the debate in companies rather than the value of what can be achieved. And I think it's going to still take a little while for this maturity and understanding the purpose and the most relevant case studies for AI. It's going to take, I think, until the business functions, whether they be marketing or HR or research departments, I think it's going to take for them to become enlightened in what these technologies can do before the real, big, progressive steps and successful case studies are going to emerge from that. So, at the moment, my sense is still there's some technology looking for a problem here rather than it coming from an enlightened user group or business dimension who need a solution to solve a particular problem. So, but anyway, having said all that, there's so many stuff that's changing so quickly. It's very dynamic. It's very fast paced. Everybody's got to approach it with a test and learn kind of philosophy, and I think that's probably one of the main messages I would leave with people today is. Peter, back to you.
No, it's I was just, can we simplify it? The hype curve usually resembles the change curve, where it goes up, this inflated expectation, then it's go down, there is a bit of disappointment, and then goes up again when it becomes already optimized and so on. Can you tell where we are, what Gartner thinks, where we're close to the upper part or reaching down?
Well, actually, it's broken up to so mostly it's in the first two areas, where it's about innovation and it's about the peak of inflated expectations. There's very, very little stuff that's gone over that peak. What I'm saying to you is, I think there's some things that are already just about there, and that's augmented software engineering, I think, is one of those areas where people are starting to question it and say, actually, this isn't quite as good as we thought. That's, in Gartner terminology, that's the trough of disillusionment. That's a lovely phrase, that is. And then you're right, there's another part of the curve that then kicks back up when people actually get used to it, they understand it better, they know when to apply it rather than applying it to everything. And that's that kind of the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity where the gains are really coming,
Yes.
and the plateau, that productivity level is never as high as the expectations that were set,
Yes.
in that peak of expectations and that peak of the hype around it. So now, and again, this is because it's still, we're still in the early stages, I would say. There's a lot of these technologies that are just sitting in the innovation part of the curve at the moment, very much on the left-hand side of the curve. They're yet to reach any kind of peak of awareness and an expectation. And very, very few things. Normally, when you see one of these diagrams for a mature kind of technology area, I'm going to say something like CRM, for example, customer relationship management suites, you would see quite a lot of stuff spread out through the entire curve, whereas this is, 90% of it is still in those first two categories.
Excellent. I know when you mentioned software development, I have a couple of friends, software entrepreneurs running mid-sized software companies, and two of them, I know for a fact, they revised their recruitment plans. They're both growing, and they just 20% less software developers will be recruited. All this productivity should come from AI. So I'm still to close the loop with them if those expectations are met, realistic. But yes, thanks for this valuable insights.
Well, that seems like a pretty sensible figure as well, by the way. It's not, you're not talking about 80% or 90%. They're just saying let's
60.
Let's go. Let's assume that we'll start with 20% less, and that seems a bit more realistic. That sounds like a more educated guess, or maybe a cautious guess. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's have a look. They say AI is by nature more cross-functional in order to, not like individual productivity tool, which is the main use case now in different space, generating text, marketing, copy, and so on. But if you go for like business challenges and business value, it is more cross-functional. You could easily, you couldn't handle it within the department usually, for sure. Their department can find use cases. But this brings the question, who should lead AI? Who is best positioned? What is the optimal setup to lead kind of business-driven, delivering business value AI initiative?
Yeah, it's interesting looking at looking at some of the companies I'm working with. Is they all seem to have a different answer to this, depending. So, and that kind of tells me two things. One is there's no obvious answer. And secondly, there's a great deal of ambiguity, and it's context sensitive as to where that should arrive from, where the leadership should arrive from. I mean, I would say it's the cross-functional piece, I think, is a very relevant point here because it is very disruptive. These things, like any major new technology being introduced to customer-facing or even back-office environments, it is a disruptive. It's got a disruptive characteristic with regard to it. I think that makes it a little too uncertain still to put it on the C-suite, to put it in, as a boardroom position. So don't rush off, from this podcast and go and appoint a chief, AI officer reporting into the CEO, unless your company happens to be an AI company, maybe. So I wouldn't do that. I think companies are kind of dealing with this in an orchestration way at the moment. They've got an orchestrator who is showing the most interest and the most leadership in this area. And I think it's pretty diverse at the moment. I was looking at an article recently which shows that it's most frequently actually the CTO or the CIO, maybe even I'd add in there a chief digital. You often find this role, the chief digital officer role still exists in a lot of companies as well, and is thriving in many industries. So yeah, this article was quoting something like 50% of the leadership in the field of AI is coming from those three positions, I would say: CTO, CIO, Chief Digital Officer. There's all sorts of other ones though. Business units, individual business units that have a particular interest in using AI, whether that's to do with the algorithms and the matching and mathematics behind their business operations, or whether that's to do with customer interaction. Those are the kind of areas where I've seen a business unit head take a lead. There's another company I work with, interestingly, that security has taken the lead on it. And it's not perhaps with security in mind that particular security leader has stepped forward. It's because of the slight chaotic nature of what orchestration implies, is that somebody has to actually put some boundaries around it and put a little bit of governance and assurance around what's being done, because these can be quite sensitive digital products. It's pretty rare, and just to sort of close out on this point, it's pretty rare to see the job title head of AI in a company. And I think that's likely to be the case for the foreseeable future, as this hype cycle, this maturity of AI develops, as the ambiguity over the leadership gradually becomes clearer, and as people get used to what that job entails in terms of AI. Does it include everything to do with data, for example, as well as software engineering? So there's an awful lot. So don't rush out and appoint a chief AI officer just yet, Peter. That's
yes. Well, thank you, Will. I'm kind of usually ask more questions in this podcast, but I'm tempted to share my experiences recently with business leaders. On one hand, as you refer to an article, I've read a Harvard article, and they recommended the following practice. If it is cross-functional, it is like 90% of major AI initiatives are cross-functional. Do not do the mistake that while it is touching marketing, you have a marketing lead, and then it goes into supply chain lead and so on. You pass the ownership. That would not deliver results. Take the business leader, the function who is most impacted or most motivated to lead it, and let it oversee it from beginning till the end. That was the Harvard recommendation based on several case studies. And now because I'm dealing with business clients and also engaging as the podcast host and with some. I spoke with like country manager of free markets in the Balkans of a major tech company, then another pharma company, again, the business leader, the business unit leader. So they both, not contrary to what you said, but they have a central unit who gives them some AI solution who are already secure. And one of them were bragging with the following use case developed by the center. So it gives the salespeople a recommendation on the account, do the research, and give them what are the current priorities of this account, what are the current issues, how it performed. Give them a brief which would take you like a day to prepare, and the salesperson have this and then can have a much more personalized, customized, and meaningful discussion. And she was confident in this case, the country manager, that it saves 1 day a week, of these salespeople, and they could use it. So that was like central initiative, but they both, these business unit leaders, they appointed, they call it AI manager, somebody who in this early hype cycle would explore, apart from the center, what it comes, driven by maybe marketing and the major business functions, they explore what AI they could employ or deploy locally. And it is more in this, again, early stage of
Yeah.
on the hype cycle, they would just see what AI can do for us, articulate the benefits on the high level. It's not really a manager, it's more like, explorer, advisor, but he would be the to-do person then to maybe articulate this in upskilling, reskilling, define a high-level business case and so on. So these all come like practical. And for those leaders who are early adopters and don't doubt that AI will bring business value, they want to be proactive, not rely fully on the center. So they go with this. And just the last comment, I see many training companies, they offer a training called AI Manager. That's how they brand it. And they give awareness, what's possible, what are the threats, a little bit of, ethical AI and so on. So this person could start, navigate, educate the senior leaders and so on. Any comments, please?
Yeah, I actually like that, the way you've described that. And in fact, actually, what it makes me think about is a kind of, a contemporary product manager, a contemporary kind of that whole digital product management piece. And I think having it driven, specifically around the AI sector is kind of like the quirky bit here, isn't it? Because typically a product manager doesn't just stick to one technology area, but they're free to explore different parts of the different technology components that come with it. But I think it fits in that product manager and the kind of description that that engaging piece where you've got to try and just put some boundaries around it and give that focus to it. That's feels like a business canvas kind of methodology there. So I think there's of course lessons to be applied from existing methodologies into the world of AI, and I think that goes for the assurance piece as well. I mean, yeah, that's right. I think they do.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned assurance and governance before. So how can we ensure, there is a lot of also concern and maybe exaggerated fear about ethical AI, biased AI, and so on. What kind of governance or assurance mechanisms, bodies, processes are worthwhile to establish in order to ensure you have AI under control? Say.
Well, that's that I don't think that question could be answered in even a day, Peter.
Yes,
at the moment, there's so many unknowns. However, I would say a couple of things to remember. Of course, with all of these kind of models, right? You do your model development, you do your model validation, you do your model deployment. Which is got again some similarities to a classic piece of software development. And some of the same things apply, but just slightly more exaggerated. So what do I mean? For example, AI doesn't understand what you're trying to do, right? In the same way as it's just that it doesn't understand. So the onus, the responsibility remains with you. To check the result. That's the first thing. You can't just rely on it. Secondly, I think most AI, most people aren't developing their own large language models. They're using the tools that are available from some of the big vendors and so on. Not all of the providers. You kind of have to make some assumptions in terms of trust, but you need to be careful about how trustworthy the use of those tools are. So for example, do they keep your data? That would be one question that I would be really curious. And I think the other tip is there's already many rules in existence. The use of personal data in AI, for example, and there's many legislations that are coming out on it. You've really got to be knowledgeable about those areas to be able to say with confidence that good the good you're protecting your company from risks to do with data protection. Of course, those reputational risks as well also come into this from a biased point of view as well. So it's a pretty heavy field actually, just to get it right. And and I think when the time comes, there will be lots of companies. There's so many different companies out there at the moment that are exploring and inventing and doing stuff in the field of AI. Probably far too many to be successful for them all to be successful. So we will see a lot of acquisitions and mergers and such like over time. Quite a lot of them are very relatively small companies at the moment, and I think understanding and trying to get underneath a piece of AI or an AI product to reassure you from a due diligence process is really really difficult. It's really really difficult knowing, does it work? Do the algorithms and does the model actually work and do what it's supposed to do? Is it reputable? Does it not lend towards bias? And thirdly, of course, will it help you make some money if you were to acquire it? So
yes, amazing. Let's have a look. Show me the money. You mentioned that you are advising global companies on how to invest. How much should we spend on AI?
Yeah, that's I think one of the things I would normally do with a company is actually refer to some useful benchmarks, either ones that I've picked up along my own pathway and projects, or benchmarks that you can find in in the public domain as well. When it comes to spending money on AI, I don't think there are any. I haven't come across them, and even if I did, I'd be a little bit reluctant to, to place bets on them as well at the moment. So I don't think there are any reliable benchmarks at the moment. Given the level of interest in the number of companies, the percentage of companies that report that they are doing something in AI, you've only got to look at company accounts and their annual financial reports, and I'm sure you're sure to see something about if it's not AI, it will say digital solutions or something along that. So it's getting to the point, I think, where it's approaching material levels within conventional company budgets. But I don't have an answer. But what does that mean? That means it's still a relatively small percentage of the total spend on technology. That's where we are at the moment. And I think that's probably reflects the level of uncertainty that goes in here. So I'd say one thing I would try and recommend is to avoid a lock-in to any one particular technology or technology provider when it comes to AI at the moment. And I think it's that this is a kind of you've got to live and learn here, Peter. I don't think there's any reliable benchmarks at the moment, but it is starting to creep up, and it's starting to reach material levels within the overall technology spend.
Are there any guidelines that you could share?
Well, I think it sounds a bit flippant, but spend your money wisely. That's I think you got to make sure that you're going after something. Most people are doing proof of concepts like crazy, and whilst a proof of concept is there to prove your case, there's some are kind of more obvious than others, and I think you got to have a way of determining which ones you go after rather than just throwing cash at it. So I'd encourage people to be more selective about which ones to go after, and for that, perhaps we come back to one of the previous discussions. You need somebody who's there orchestrating, what does good look like and what should we be going after? That's where some leadership is required, and some cross-functional collaboration is, and some disappointment as well, by the way, because if the investment levels in AI within companies is still approaching material levels, that means what I mean by that. I mean they're not there yet. There ain't a lot of that disposable available pot of money, that discretionary pot of money to be flippant with what you're spending it on. And I think soon companies will start to turn the lens the other way and say, what value have we got from these proof of concepts? And to start, telling us, telling us a little bit more and providing us a little bit more in terms of benchmarks for these kind of investments. So spend your money wisely, Peter. I think
Yes, yes, very
it's not,
prudent.
it's not for free.
And when you say material level, is there any? Can you mention any number, any benchmark? How much from turnover or profit? What would be the border?
If I think of in terms of no, I don't have a in terms of turnover, unless you're actually in the business of AI, it's very, very small percentage. If I look at the cost of IT, for example, as a useful reference point, then it's still below 20% of budgets. It's that's what I call, so if it's approaching material levels, it's starting to force people who are making the investment decisions into really difficult and uncomfortable decisions. At the moment, I still think they're finding a budget for it that doesn't affect and impact materially the major other services and major other investments that they want to make. So I think it's kind of like, yeah, that's I think that's where it is, and when it starts to force decision makers to say, I've either got to do AI or, a key operational service upgrade or a decision to do with an investment in a more conventional business case that is going to deliver returns. That's when it's going to start to feel really awkward and uncomfortable, and that's that'll signify another step in that maturity level as well.
Yes, yes, and the war for talent is still raging, and maybe the lack of talent and people to fill some of the project, and then equivalent or similar expertise, if it could be delivered by AI, that would probably drive, kind of discussion for where to invest.
Yeah, that certainly would, the availability of talent. But then, Peter, we've all been reinventing ourselves for decades in the field of IT. Every time the next big thing comes along, there is a diversion, there is a lag, and then there's a diversion of resources, of knowledge, of training, of investment in people. And I think that lag, we'll start to see a sort of switch there as well. And of course, there's so many new job titles that have come with this technology. It's difficult to know exactly the precise skill set that's needed for each of them. But yeah, there's I think there's a lack of skill. I don't think there's a lack of capability. I think we just haven't got over the lag of people switching their attention to having a career in AI, as it were.
Yes, and maybe just to validate with you, having dealing with investment, there was if you look the company that developed ChatGPT, OpenAI, and then Microsoft and Google and the big player in generative AI, initially they threw a lot of money, and the more money you throw, you take a bigger corpus of data, and then it gives you a smarter result. But now the good news is what I'm hearing and reading. You don't need as much data now. It reached certain level of intelligence, and with little data and with less effort and cost for labeling and manipulating those data, you could make it smarter. And same apply now if you have your own large language model for your corporate business case. You could use the already achieved like general intelligence and then train it on your data and get customized results, which is kind of reducing the level of investment to have a meaningful business case. Do you share this in principle, or how do you see this?
Well, I think there's some very good reasons why the huge vendors are able to promote technologies that they've established themselves and language models that they've established themselves is because it required very, very deep pockets for them to
Yes.
to get to the stage where they are, and most other mortal companies wouldn't be able to have afforded the kind of levels of investment that have gone into it. So in some ways, the mega vendors, I think I've talked about this before actually on different forums, that we're now switching, I think, to a more trusted relationship with the mega vendors, and we're doing that because they've got some of this stuff in abundance. They're developing it very, very quickly, and they have some, because they're mega vendors, they also have people in their governance, in their boards, in their non-executive community who are concerned about levels of risk, and they have obligations that are probably bigger and more fundamental than some other smaller companies do, in terms of reassuring their shareholders that they're doing the right thing and managing risk for the clients that then use their tools. But I think, coming back to it, it's still very, very expensive to develop a large language model, and most companies don't know how to do it. So I think the use of tools and technologies from mega vendors and from other niche players, I mean, they're all vying for, it's kind of an arms race at the moment, isn't it? They're all vying for pole position, and looking for that real killer kind of application and killer set of services that they can wrap around it for companies, for big corporates and smaller corporates to use as well. So I think you can't put all your money into developing your own stuff. I think it's about piecing together the components that are coming online and forming that. I don't know, Peter, if you see the same thing in the companies that you work with as well.
Yes, and I didn't mean develop your own language model. That would be too expensive and not worthwhile. I mean, using their commercials, they are open source, and then apparently there is with training it on your own data in a secure way, you could reach level of customization and level of insights for your own business with a lesser cost. The curve gets much flattened, and that's kind of a good news. And I've been dealing with FMCGs, with automotive and so on. Some of the major automotive, they use open source only large language models, and they train it on our data in a very kind of secure and closed environments, and they already delivered their first business cases. Whereas other use commercial, but with this rack model, where you can retrieve your own data, you always augment the insights and so on from your data sources. So there are various cases.
No, that's fair.
So last question, Will. Thank you. Very pragmatic insight, and very close to the market. Now, forget about the market. Take your crystal ball out and tell me your view, what your intuition or crystal ball says. What is the ultimate frontier of AI? Not just in business, in life, government, any area of life.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to right at the beginning of this conversation, Peter, where I referenced healthcare, because I just think that's I mean, people are talking about so many different kind of case studies, but I think if there's certain moments in the world of technology, isn't there, where and being proud technologists ourselves. I think just there's an altruistic element to this, I suppose, but I think using it for good purpose and good reason, and I can't think of anything better and more appropriate than the healthcare sector for that to be the case. Whether it's whether that's finding diagnoses that weren't possible before because of the use of AI, or whether that's finding clever solutions or therapies or drugs that may relieve the symptoms or whatever goes with a particular illness. So I think that if we could do one good thing from the technology industry, in the foreseeable future, it would be, throw some weight behind the use of AI in healthcare.
Yes, I fully share that, and actually contemplating book around, breakthrough healings, cancer, and so on. And funny enough, yesterday I had a guest who is leading a large business unit in a major healthcare company. And he was quite optimistic as well. They're making significant progress in terms of personalized treatment, in terms of early diagnostics. So it is already delivering great results. And I think the curve is also there quite steep. And I would rather bet we would expect soon major breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. And it was, as usual, a great pleasure. Thank you.